Now, on to something that is significantly less pleasant. I'm sure you guys have all been paying attention to what's been going on in the Catholic Church as of recent in my home state, actually, of Pennsylvania. We haven't talked about it yet on the show, but Susan shared an article today, and I was going to kind of use it as the question point today, so I'll go ahead and do it. So let's go to the article here. And this is, there were reports out of Pennsylvania that basically there were a large number of priests that were sexually abusing children over the years, and it was swept under the rug. And here's a report that there was even more horrific things going on. Let's go to this article. Grand jury report, priests ran a child porn ring in Pittsburgh Diocese. Pittsburgh is my hometown. This guy here, Bishop Donald Wuerl, he was the bishop ever since I was a kid. And I remember, Bishop Wuerl would come to my grade school. He would also come to my high school. I went to Catholic grade school and high school. And it was actually kind of cool whenever we would see him as children, because we knew we were getting the day off. That was the sort of tradition. The bishop would come and he would give you the day off. He'd say, no more school today, and everyone would be like, yay, and then we would go home. So we were stoked to see this dude. And Bishop Donald Wuerl presided over the funeral of a guy named Reverend George Zerus, who was one of the priests accused of participating in the ring of predatory priests. George said he never discussed the nude Polaroids or the twisted secret gift he and the other kids had been given decades ago by the men who preyed on them. These weren't the kind of things you could share without feeling humiliated, especially not if you grew up tough, like he did on the south side of Pittsburgh. But you can't outrun your nightmares forever. So on December 17th, a week before Roman Catholics around the world celebrated Christmas, George met with a Pennsylvania grand jury and told it about that's an awkward sentence. And told it about the Reverend George Zerus, a friendly young priest who once took him to a rectory in Munhall, a borough about 25 minutes from downtown Pittsburgh. I took a girl to prom that was from Munhall. That's near where I grew up. A borough about 25 minutes from downtown Pittsburgh, and introduced him to some friends. This is going to be hard to read. The Revs, Francis Pucci, Richard Zula, and Francis Luddy. During a conversation about religious statues, the priest told George to get into a bed and remove his shirt and strike a pose like Jesus on the cross. Then they instructed him to strip off his pants and underwear, according to a grand jury report released Tuesday. In the unnerving moments that followed, George claimed that Zulu and Pucci began taking photos of him on a Polaroid camera. All of the priests giggled, and then added the photos of George to a collection of photos of other teen boys. According to the grand jury, if you're uncomfortable now, you should be. You should be uncomfortable right now. I am. This is disgusting. According to the grand jury, these men and another priest, the Reverend Robert Wolk, were part of a ring of predatory priests who raped children, shared intelligence on potential victims, and manufactured child pornography in parishes and rectories. And by the way, just a disclaimer, this is from just a local newspaper, by the way. This is not some, so some of you that are apologists for the Catholic Church, and I know you're out there, some of you that, this might be embellished, this is from a local newspaper, okay? This is from a local newspaper in eastern Pennsylvania. This group of priests used whips, violence, and sadism in raping their victims. Reads one line of the nearly 900-page document, which outlines horrific abuse that occurred in Pittsburgh and 5 other Catholic dioceses, including Allentown, across the state. The report said the men gave a specific gift to the children they favored, something they could wear that would mark them as prime targets for abuse. Zuras has told me that they, the priests, would give their boys, their altar boys, or their favorite boys, these crosses. So he gave me a big gold cross to wear. He remembered the rectory photo session as a degrading experience. According to Tuesday's report, Zula engaged in violent sexual activity with a child at a rectory in the Pittsburgh Diocese. Church reports further describe parties Zula hosted for children that featured marijuana, alcohol, oral sex, attempted anal sex, and whips. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison in 1990 and died last year. Wuerl was accused of sexually assaulting 2 adolescent brothers over a 6-year period, pleaded guilty to involuntary deviant sexual intercourse, and was sentenced to 5 to 10 years in prison. Charges against Pucci were dropped because of a statute of limitations had expired. Maybe because there were powerful people helping to cover it up. And I tweeted yesterday that Pope Francis is a lot like the Obama of popes. And what I mean by that is he says a lot of great things, and he is incredibly likable. Meanwhile, nothing really changes. And some people were telling me that, oh no, things have changed. And what evidence did they have to point to? They had to point to nice things he said. He said nice things. No policy changes. And as far as this stuff goes, have some priests faced prison? Yes. But it wasn't because of the Catholic Church. It was because of people nonstop pursuing justice. And in many cases because they turned themselves in. It wasn't because of the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church as a whole has covered it up. Does that mean every single person affiliated with the church was involved? Of course not. Most probably weren't. But enough participated and enough willingly covered this up or turned a blank eye to it that this is absolutely horrific. And I decided years ago this was a team I no longer wanted to be part of. I have not gone to church voluntarily since the age of 12. And I stopped going altogether as soon as I no longer had to, basically. And I feel a lot better without religion in my life. At all. And these are people that I was supposed to... These were supposed to be role models to me as a child. Donald Wuerl, who I can... At least you can say, I mean, the guy was at the predatory priest's funeral. He, at the very least, complicitly, passively accepts this stuff. I don't know of anybody at a high level that has left the clergy entirely saying this is disgusting. And yet people are still total apologists for this. I mean, how can you passively accept such go see The Keepers. Watch the movie Hear No Evil. The church is incredibly guilty at sweeping this under the rug, at covering it up, at shaming victims, and at blackmail. They've done all of that. All of that. And yet, as far as the law enforcing any types of punishment, it has been at a minimum. There should be collusion cases against the entire institution. There should be class action lawsuits. And I wouldn't shed one tear if it bankrupted the Vatican. In fact, I'd be happy if it did. That would be justice. A class action suit that bankrupts the Vatican. So, I guess my question is, what religion were you guys raised with, if any, and do you still practice it? Let's talk about our let's talk about our religious views. As I'm sure comes as a shock to all of you, I no longer practice anything. I was raised Catholic. I left the team, and they make commercials asking people to come home. Come home. Like, they literally have commercials where they're like, if you've been astray, you should come back. Has anything changed? No, but please come back. Like, it's so sad. And because of stuff like this, I see the importance. And granted, I my reason for leaving the Catholic Church wasn't even because of all this. I mean, I left before any of that stuff had really surfaced. I mean, I left just because I didn't believe in any of it, and still don't. And then, of course, all this stuff started coming to the surface later on. And I believe, like, the early aughts and stuff was when a lot of it first started surfacing. And especially, and now I'm seeing news close to my hometown, which is that much more, I was an altar boy as a kid. I was one of the top altar servers. I should say altar servers because by the time I was there, they did allow girls to be altar servers as well. They progressed. By the way, if you ever want to know the real reason women can't be priests, I'll go to the chat, and if you guys want to know, I'll tell you. Because I unfortunately know this information. It is the most batshit absurd explanation that is literally zombie-esque that you will ever hear. And I'll tell you if you want to know. I'll tell you if you want. And you know what? And I get it. There are still some great people involved. There really are. There are some people in Catholic social thought that are progressive activists. There are some radical priests out there that are committed to a life of service, that do service projects, that I can only imagine that type of discipline. I don't know why they stay on this team. Maybe it's because that's just the umbrella they know, and they're able to do good with that umbrella, so they... I don't know. I can't relate to it. So I'm not trying to use a broad brush. There's good apples and bad apples everywhere. I know that. But you know what? When you use that type of dismissal, you're dismissing a systemic problem. There's a systemic problem in the Catholic Church. There's a systemic problem of turning a blind eye to abuse and ignoring it and actually abusing power in so many ways. Not just in the most on the surface way of abusing children, of sexually abusing children, but also in the administrative way of then shaming and blackmailing victims. So, if you're still on the team and you're angry at me, do something about the team. Realize that it's a systemic issue. Do you think if every parishioner said, until something is really done about this, until there is systemic justice and a systemic solution to this problem, we ain't paying our dues? Do you think if people did that en masse, nothing would change? I bet it would. Because these institutions care about money above all else. George Carlin said it best: when it comes to pure bullshit, a businessman cannot hold a candle to a clergyman. He was right then, and he's right today. Because between when he said that in the 90s and now, nothing's changed. Actually, I take that back. It's gotten worse. It's gotten worse. You know who shouldn't be tax exempt anymore? The Mormon Church. They should be paying taxes right now because they made a clear violation when Prop 8 went down, and they face no consequences for it. And I think the only just solution to all this would be a complete overhaul of all the administration in the Catholic Church, a complete revamping of it, and a class action suit that, I would like to see bankrupt the Vatican. Completely bankrupt the Vatican. And the only people that have any chance at keeping their funding are the people that are actually doing nothing but charity. I'd like to see those groups keep their funding. The Catholic social thought groups, I'd like to see them keep their funding because they're actually doing good in the world. But as far as the good Pope and his $9 million costumes, it's a freaking costume, by the way. It's a costume. That goes bye-bye. That goes away. Let me see what you guys are saying in the chat. Chili says, I've been to Catechism Temple and under a redwood I chose the forest. I like that. That belongs on a t-shirt. Chili, make a t-shirt out of that. I've been to Catechism Temple and under a redwood I choose the forest. Brian, I don't like speaking in tongues. There were teachers at my school that claimed they could do that. There was this religion teacher. He was a weirdo among weirdos. And he would, randomly start speaking in tongues. I don't know what he was actually doing. Wicked Guru says, I want to know why women can't be priests just because you hyped it. Man, now I feel like I oversold it. Damn it. You guys are going to be... I'm going to tell you, and you're going to be like, that wasn't that great, Ron. That wasn't that great. The Double B says, I would forbid minors attending any religious institutions. Jason says, Scientology should be taxed. I think all of them should be taxed. Scientology, I think, is a cult, but I think they should all be taxed. And Dwayne used the famous Groucho quote, I don't want to belong to any club that will accept me as a member. Celeste says, organized religions causes more problems than it solves. I agree with you 110%. And Daniel points out they're all cults. You're right, but I think some are more severe than others. The Catholic Church, Derek says, the Catholic Church is set up in a way that each parish is a separate legal entity. This limits financial judgments against the church as a whole. Whoa, my partner, Ashley, says this. My partner went to Catholic school. He had a class that taught speaking in tongues. Wow. So wait, I thought that wasn't something you can teach. That's something that you just have a calling or whatever, right? Isn't that... Are you serious? Andy wants to know, why can't women be priests? Because they would be priestess. Duh. All right, so I'll tell you guys, and I hope I didn't oversell this. Here is why women can't be priests, all right? And I heard this actually on NPR. It was an NPR segment where they had an atheist, basically, or a person that was a secularist, saying that women should be able to be priests. And then they had somebody from the Catholic Church defend why women can't be. And this person sounded very intelligent. And they explained why women can't be priests. And somehow they did this with a straight face. And they didn't think they sounded insane at all. But here is the unfiltered version of why women can't be priests, okay? So Jesus was a dude. According to their narrative and their dogma, Jesus was a guy, and he, the story's true that he was crucified and then he came back to life. And so during the Eucharist, which is when you take communion in Catholicism, you take this host and you eat it and it's bread, and they call it the host because Jesus comes in there and he is present in the Eucharist. His body that's why they say, eat my body, drink my blood, which, doesn't sound creepy at all. And so that's, and it's symbolic, right? But they do believe it's a little more than symbolic. He is present in the Eucharist, not to the point where you're being a cannibal, but the body of Christ is present in it. And I know you're thinking, Ron, this already sounds kind of ridiculous. Yeah, I know, but that's this is what it is. So here's why women can't be priests. You need to channel the soul of Jesus into the Eucharist, and you need a vessel, and that vessel needs to be the same gender that Jesus was. So because Jesus was a dude, you need a dude to channel that. So zombie Jesus can't transfer through a woman. Zombie Jesus needs a man to get into the Eucharist. That's why women can't be priests. That's why Ron hasn't got a clue. What about... All right, well then what's your theory? That is what a member of the Catholic Church said on NPR. That's not my argument, David. That's far from my argument. That's why women can't be priests. What's another explanation? That is why they said women can't be priests. Of course it's absolutely absurd. It's absolutely absurd. D. Dean, if you're saying I don't know what I'm talking about, I went to 12 years of Catholic school. These were the explanations given to us. I heard a report on NPR. That was the explanation given. If you are aware of something I'm not, please share with us. Why can't women be priests? That is literally why. Because they need somebody to channel Jesus, and it needs to be a male because Jesus was a male. That is their explanation why women can't be priests. I don't hear an alternative explanation from anybody. I was raised Mormon, and it's kind of weird in retrospect how they prioritize the Book of Mormon over everything else, JK points out. Yeah. So, Susan, thank you for sharing that. So, all the stuff that's been reported this week is even worse than we realized. I mean, I don't know how it could get worse, but somehow it manages to, and I'm sure it's going to keep getting worse.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and make it our own. Get your news